Okay, now we have a little bit of cleanup to do on this image because we've introduced some artifacts into the image while we were doing some of the arcsine stretch. That's one of the dangers of that process. It really helps with the color, but it can also do some wacky things on some of the brighter objects. So I don't like this. Obviously, I want to clean that up, and there's a couple instances, particularly these three bright stars. I don't know if it has appeared on some of the other bright stars that we made. That's not too bad. Those aren't that bad that I may not need to do anything about them, but kind of just look around the image at some of the brighter stars. So there's one that I'm going to want to deal with. And unfortunately, that is rather tedious and surgical in nature to try to isolate just those aspects. See, this is just a really unnatural looking star there that I want to deal with now. So that's the trade-off with arcsine stretch. Let's see how we might clean those up. And again, there's a bazillion different ways. I'm going to try to expedite this part of the video because it is so tedious, and rather just demonstrate what it is rather than you watch real time how I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to create a mask that will target these brighter stars only. Everything else will be protected, and it will only identify these stars. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. I'm probably going to try a range mask, or actually I might just take a luminance version here. Again, extract the luminance and clip the black point up really, really high until just those really, really bright areas remain, which you see there. And that kind of captures all the troublesome stars. Right about there is the most troublesome stars. So I'm going to apply that as a permanent stretch as my starting point. And then reset screen stretch. And now I'm going to try to make those. Those are still funny looking stars. Obviously, I got to make those black and white. So what I'm going to do is use binarize and see if that will help. Binarize is just a process that basically you specify a threshold, a brightness threshold, and anything below that threshold will be mapped as zeros. No data, and anything above that threshold will be transitioned to just being straight up 1. And so that might work in this case, although these levels, it may not work. We'll have to try. I may have to use clone stamp to generate some aspects on this. But let's try it, see what happens. In general, the star here is 0.6, 0.2. So why don't we try 0.2 as that threshold, and let's just see what it does. All right, so it added quite a bit more, but it's getting better. It's getting closer to being a full star. And I might just use clone stamp now to surgically fill those in, which again, very tedious process. I will demonstrate it, but then won't make you watch the whole thing. All right, so because PixInsight doesn't have a paintbrush feature, it's not something that you can, you can't paint directly with a paintbrush, but that does have something similar called the clone stamp tool that you can use like a paintbrush. And so the first thing you need to do is have a paint bucket, a bucket of paint. And so what I do is I clone the image. I then use pixel math to make an all white image. And so I just say I want all pixels to be a value 1. And by that very nature, you get a completely white image. I will also do the same thing just in case I need it. I will clone the image again, and I will do the exact opposite. I will make an image that is all black. And let me just, so that we have those identified, black. I'm going to rename that image black. I'm going to rename this image white. And we're going to tuck those guys away in here, and we'll pull them out in a second when we're ready. In fact, I'm going to close this pixel math, and now I'm going to open up a tool called Clone Stamp. Clone Stamp. Oh, actually, I got to close that because there's a key important part to make this tool work well. When you want to use Clone Stamp, the image that you want to paint onto needs to be the active image when you launch this tool. So I want to paint on my mask here. And so while that's active, I will launch Clone Stamp. And I will now, it says no source point is identified. Well, let me open my white image and click inside the white image. And now this is the source point. This is what it's going to paint. Wherever the cursor is on this canvas, it's now going to paint that same exact thing in the target image. Well, in this case, everything's white, so it's just going to paint white. I can adjust my brush size, if you will, the radius of it, and the softness of what I am. Because right now I'm just black and white, I don't really care about the softness. I just want to start filling in some of these things. So very, very tedious, very, very time consuming, but it gets the job done. So I won't bore you with this. I'll pause the video and go around and repair some of those stars, those artifacts, and then resume here in a minute. Okay, so after much tedious perusing of this image, I have gone through and either filled in some of those circles, white circles, to now be complete circles and stars. And then a lot of the other very, very tiny things that showed up as stars, I just either blacked them out or filled them in as white as well. And so these are, this image now represents what I think are the brightest center of the brightest stars. And now that I'm finished with Clone Stamp, I will close that out. I will tuck away my white and black canvases in case I need them in the future. And now I want to enlarge and grow this mask, make it a little bit, because remember I used binarize, so this is a very, very hard edge of either black or white. I need to now make that fuzzy. And so we're going to use convolution and morphological transformation for that. So again, I have that mask enlarge and blur, which is just a combination of that. So I'm going to apply that first. Already that has softened and grown the edges. I think what I'm going to do is try to apply one more round of convolution on that just to see how well it does. So let me create a preview around these stars. Those are really the suspect ones that I want to address. Go into preview mode and see if I can change the shape a little bit to be a little bit softer, and then raise the strength up. That's getting pretty good, where it's pretty gradual. Nice transition, little gray. I'll have to brighten that up in a second, but I'm pretty happy with that. And so I will apply that to the whole image. And that's really softened up those key areas. But because this is going to be a mask, I want to make sure that it's not too gradual of a mask. I want to brighten those up, those areas up. So I'm just going to open up histogram transformation, go into the preview mode, and brighten things up just a little bit so that that works as a better mask. So I'm good with that. I will apply that. Make sure screen stretch is off. Close histogram transformation and delete my previews just to do some cleanup here. And I'm going to call this Bright Stars Mask. Okay. And the whole reason, if you recall, why I'm doing this is I'm going to apply this mask to my RGB image. Let's make sure that it's doing the right thing. So now it is going to work on these suspect stars that have these ugly cores, ugly centers. And notice it's including some of the other ones here that maybe I didn't recognize as having issues. Maybe I don't need all those. And we'll see what it does. If it's too much, well, then we'll delete those out of the mask as well. But let's make sure that we certainly get rid of these ugly centers here. So I'm going to hide the mask. It's still applied, but it's just hidden. And the first thing I want to try is just to raise the blow these out, basically stretch them further than what you normally would stretch, just to blow the centers out and kind of make them even. So I'm just going to try that. Maybe that would be enough. If I go to preview mode, and actually let me generate another preview here just so that we can work in that window. Just preview around those guys. And let's just bring the white point down. And all this does, because I have a mask, it's not changing any part of the image except for those areas. And notice what I'm basically doing is bringing the white point down. So what that means is that any value that is higher than this value, it's just going to call that pure white. And so that's just a quick way to disguise those ugly sins that were inside of those stars. And you see it did a very nice job. My mask is gradual. It looks decent. So let's see how that appears on other areas of the image. Where else did we have some troublesome stars? How about here with these guys? Let me just quick create another preview and see what it does for those areas. And so it's a little unnatural. It's a little bit more blown out than I would like. But I think it's improved over what was there in the first place. I think I'm going to leave that for now. Let's see if there's any other troublesome areas that this technique would introduce unwanted artifacts. Let me just go up here, make sure that we're not damaging our galaxy. One thing I didn't look at is whether or not this core of the galaxy is in my mask. I certainly don't want to blow that out. So let me create a preview around it. And go in there and look at the preview mode. And notice when I blink these, it's only attacking those stars. And it might, again, be a little bit more aggressive than I need to. But I think I'm going to call that good. It's better than the alternative. All right, so now the question is just to make sure I didn't damage any other aspects of the image. You can, go and really with a fine-tooth comb and look and see and make sure you didn't damage anything. I'll check one more time on this galaxy because this is one that I really want to protect. So we will look at the preview mode. And sure enough, it appears as though it's only working Oh, now see, that's not what I want to do. I definitely see those galaxies. I definitely do not want to blow those galaxies open as well. So I need to find out where those are and delete those from my mask, because I do not want to edit this guy, or this guy, which is obviously being impacted right now. Okay, so we've got to go find those. Let's do that. The way you can do that is, I know it's this galaxy, and this galaxy. So what I'll do is I'll match this zoom, level of zoom, and match it precisely on this image, and then overlay the two and blink them by hitting Control Page Down. And so you can see I need to delete this, and this, which is easy enough to do using clone stamp. So I will make sure that this image is active. And I will open up clone stamp, and I will define the source point as a black target, and then I will go back to my image. And so I wanted to delete this one, and this one. And hit apply. And now again, go back to histogram transformation, where I'm looking at preview 4, hit that and blink. And now you can see I'm only impacting those stars. I'm not influencing those galaxies. So I think I do need to do a little bit more work, because I certainly don't want to damage any galaxies. So I will, unfortunately, with great scrutiny, go over this image and make sure that I'm not doing that. I'm going to pause the video while I do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have painstakingly gone through my mask here that is supposed to identify the brightest stars that had those wacky artifacts in it, and this was the result. These are the suspect stars that I want to try to target and improve upon. And so if I just show you, obviously these stars are really ugly stars. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't target any galaxies, or try to blow those out as well. And this is just a quick technique to get rid of those ugly centers. So let me just show you the result here. I haven't applied it yet, but I can show you the preview if I click preview mode, and hopefully this will come through in the video. If I turn this on and off, this is without it and with. So I'll just keep blinking that and make your way around the image, and you'll see that, obviously these three stars here are being addressed when I blink now. And I'm almost probably doing it a little too much. Let me back off just a little bit, because I think that's probably a little, might be just enough to make those ugly centers go away. And now let me blink it. So that has corrected that. And you'll see there's these other little stars, like here's one, that I kept and are also being modified ever so slightly, just to get rid of the ugly centers that sometimes that arc sign stretch introduces. And hopefully that's not too much of a sacrifice on the star appearance in order to correct those very ugly sins. All right, so with that, I'm pretty satisfied with at least correcting those aspects. I'm going to permanently apply that. And that's just an example of how I selectively targeted certain aspects of the image to correct without affecting the other side or other parts of the image using a mask. So that was really the cleanup from artifacts that I noticed that I wanted to do. Moving forward here, I'm going to minimize and close some of these things down here. Just to clean up my desk a little bit. Now, the rest of what remains is, again, subjective, up to what people want to do. And I have a host of different processes that I go through. Some I use, some I don't use. I try a couple things, and if I like it, then I move forward with it. So let's try a little bit more denoise of the background. You know, there is still some noise here that maybe we can get away with cleaning up. Let's see, let me remove the mask that's currently on there and now put back in its place the mask that I made, which was a luminance mask that I blackened, made the blacks blacker and the whites whiter, and called it a noise reduction mask. I will apply that because I only want to work on the background sky here. I want to protect everything else. I'll hit Control K just to make sure I have the mask correct, which I don't. I need to reverse it, or invert it rather. And so now it's protecting the galaxies again and exposing the sky background. And so TGVD noise is just another smoothing, denoising process, which you can get carried away with. It can be, it's very easy to go too far, and I often do that, not on purpose, but just because I try to find that ultra smooth background while at the same time preserving detail. So we'll give it a shot. These are just the settings that I use right out of the box. You can see what they are. You're welcome to tweak them and play around with this tool. I'm going to run this on a preview and just see what happens if I like it. If I don't, I will skip and move on. So this process, when it's running, does take a little bit longer than MLT, which is the other process we do when we're trying to smooth the background in the linear state. TGVD noise is a smoothing process that I use while I'm now in the nonlinear state after we've stretched the images. And so it's running here. It should be done here in just a minute. All right, and that finished. So it's definitely smoother. The question is that better? And so let's toggle back and forth. Is that better? Actually, I think I do like that. It's just a little bit more smooth. And it did hit the galaxies, but not in a bad way. I kind of like that. Where else? Let me try that in the two little galaxies that I'm working so hard to protect. One guy up here and the other guy over here that has some detail in it. Let's try to run this on that just to make sure that we're not doing any harm to those guys. Okay, and it just finished. Let's flash it. So that one, it's definitely smoothing the background, but is it also getting rid of some of the detail in the galaxy? I'm not sure that it is. It's just making it a nice, much smoother look, I'm inclined to just leave that. I don't think I'm losing much detail on that one. Let me just check a couple other things. All right, and then let's check this last third galaxy just to make sure that we're not destroying any detail there. All right, it finished running the process. Let's blink and see. Yeah, I think that did a pretty good job. It's subtle enough that it's providing a little bit more smoothing but not destroying any data. So I'm going to go with that. I'm happy with at least the key areas that I want to protect, the most interesting areas, and let's run that on the full image, which will take a while, so I will pause the video while it's running. All right, it has finished applying the TGVD noise, and it looks quite good. Let me delete these previews, and let's just take a look here. Looks very smooth. Some of the stars I'm still not crazy about where we've corrected them, a little bit overcorrection, but I think it's not too bad. And it looks a lot smoother. So I think you know, when I was unhappy with the level of noise, this has helped bring it down to something that's a little bit more pleasing, at least to my eye. Now you'll see here there's still some stars here that look a little wonky. I may try to still target some of those, see if we can improve some of those. But in general, this is a very good deep field. All right, so after TGV denoising, another thing that I will do is I'm not sure that HDR is going to do anything for me, although we can try it. Maybe we can squeak out a little bit of definition in these two upper galaxies. We'll try it. I'm not too optimistic that it's going to do much, but we will draw previews around them, and let's just see if we can get anything to show up on that. So these are the settings that I use for HDR, multi-scale transform. Not going to really cover too much about this tool. I just run these settings. I don't use anything else. Let me undo that and try to do it again and see what it does. Yeah, it's definitely not good. I definitely don't like that, so I'm not going to be running HDR on anything. I won't even test the other area. We just won't apply that. That's not a good tool for this. And now let's try local histogram transformation. Again, I really think the only opportunities is to apply it on these little galaxies. This one has a preview mode that you can see, and so I don't know that that's really adding any value. Brightens the images a little bit, but also brightens the background, so not interested in that process either. And again, these are just some tools that I use. Sometimes they work well with an image, sometimes they don't. I know that HDR tool in a lot of cases will bring out a ton of definition in larger galaxies, and it's a very valuable tool. But on this one, not so much. So this is always difficult for me to see. I can't really tell if there's a green cast to this image, but one way of certainly, it's a very common thing to have is a green cast to your image. Quiet! Quiet! And so if you apply SCNR, it's going to kill the green in the image, and let's see if we like it. So I think it did a pretty good job. If I undo that and then redo it, you know, the fact that sometimes it's pretty significant when you do SCNR with the green, it kills quite a bit of green. And this just the fact that this was so subtle means that we had a pretty good color balance to begin with. When we stretch the image, which is a good thing. So I'm going to keep that. It did help a little bit. I don't think it hurt anything. Curves. Again, right now I just have a setting here where I believe, which curve is this? The saturation curve is the only one that is actually doing anything. And so let me just check. Certainly it has improved or raised the saturation level on this image. Let me blink it. And so I think it might be a little much, but I kind of like it. Gives a lot more character to the image. Maybe I'll bring it down just a little bit. That's quite a bit. I'll bring it down to that level. Yeah. And boy, are these stars are white because I really blew those out. This one still has a hint of blue in it. I might do some more surgery on those stars just because they're so dang bright. They almost overpower the image. I might tone them down because they're drawing the eye away from the galaxies, which is what I really want you to look at. And these are just too bright. So I probably will go back and kill those brightness levels a little bit here in a second. But all in all, I really like what the saturation is doing in the curves, so I'm going to apply that. More saturation isn't always better. Do I like this? The stars are very blue, almost purple. If I do that, I think that's starting to get a little unnatural. I might do a little bit more saturation enrichment if I pull it into Photoshop here at the end. But for now, I'm going to leave this one alone. It's a little just too much for my taste. Sharpening. Let's draw another preview around our famous galaxies up here to see if this is something that we want to... Oh, that's a preview mode, sorry. Let's just look in our previews, see if this MLT from a sharpening standpoint is anything that we want to do. And I do not believe I want to. While it is providing a little bit of sharpening, it's also blowing out some other things. I could get a mask to protect those other things, but I'm pretty content with the way these galaxies are starting to look. I'm not sure that we're going to squeeze any much more detail out of them to begin with. So I will skip MLT sharpening. Unsharp mask, same thing. We can try it, see if we like it. No. And you know, the danger with sharpening is you're also sharpening the noise that you just work so hard to try to smooth. It will do the opposite effect, so it's the trade-off. I do not want to do that because it amplifies the noise, so I'm going to skip unsharp mask and try auto histogram to see. Nope, I don't like it, so I will skip that. And a lot of these are just trial and error. You know, these are settings that I got from books or from Adam Block or from other members to see serve as a starting point. And you know, you can try them. If you don't like them, then you can just not use them. And so this one is exponential transformation. All this does is really brighten the image. Let me try and see what that looks like on the full image. So I will apply this and see if I like that. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep that. It's pretty common for me to do exponential transformation at the end. It just is a one little brightening of the image to just really lighten the background image just enough so that it's not completely black. All right, so as far as final touches, I've taken all the things that I normally would do to a final image. I would bring it into Photoshop. I do want to kill the brightness of these stars here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my previews because I don't need those ones up there. What I am going to do is draw a new preview down here because we're going to just focus on those 3 stars. I'm going to get my mask that I use to tweak the stars, which is, I gotta find it somewhere here. It is Bright Stars Mask. That's what it was called. And I'm gonna clone this. I'm gonna put that one away, and I'm gonna use clone stamp. I'm gonna delete everything else except for those 3 stars because they're the only stars that I want to work on. So to do that, I'm going to use clone stamp and my black canvas. So this image is active. I will launch clone stamp, and it says no source point is defined. Well, here's a source point, and now I will go around the image and, like I said, remove everything else. Okay, I have to redefine my point. So here's my target image. Let's accept those. And delete those out. So I think that's everything. That's just those 3 stars. Accept those changes. Close out clone stamp. Put my black canvas away. And now I think I want to, let me just see how that mask compares to my image. Because what I want to do is make sure that they are covering those stars well. So let me zoom in just to those stars, and I will match this view to my mask, and so that I can overlay them and blink them using control page down. And I just want to make sure that the mask covers the complete star and then some. I already know that the mask has a good transition, smooth transition. It's not too harsh. Oops. So this is a nice gradient, smooth transition from white to black, so that it's not obvious. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to apply this mask to this image. I'm going to make sure that it's applied correctly. So I'm protecting everything else except for those stars, which is what I want to work on. And I'm going to go to my preview mode, and now I am going to go into, well, I guess I could go to histogram transformation. We can try that. Let's see if that's just a quick, easy way to target those. So I will turn on preview mode, and let's just try to darken the image, darken them a little bit. And so now that's giving weird ringing artifacts that I don't want to create. And so I am not going to use at least that way. What if I raise the black point? What does that do? That's not affecting it. What if I change the range? Alright, so that helps a little bit without introducing more artifacts. One thing I don't want to do is create things like that. Although they look cool, it's not something I want to do. But it is killing the stars to some degree. So maybe if I just do it ever so slightly. So let's keep that in our back pocket. I want to see if there's better methods. So we can always do that. Let's see if there's something else in the curves tool. If I reset this tool and go to the luminance, if I bring this down, oh, I gotta go into preview mode. So again, that's not doing what I want. Let me reset that. Let me go into alpha channel. That's not doing anything. So a lot of this is trial and error. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when I have a good solution. All right, so what I ended up doing is I used curves, and I used the RGBK setting where I just raised, or rather lowered actually, this point over here, and I brought it about, you know, maybe 1/5 or so the way down, and it produced a little bit of darkening in those stars, just to knock down some of the brightness and not draw your eye there, because really I want to focus on the amount of galaxies that are in this image. So I think that's a good balance. It didn't introduce crazy artifacts that are too ugly, and I think we'll go with that. So I am finished with what I consider a final image. I will now move on to the last few things that I'll do in Photoshop. I'll save this as a TIFF and move on to Photoshop just for some last minute checks that I may or may not do. But it's always nice to see if there's one or two last things just to improve the image just a little bit better. So that will be the next video.